honestly, we're afraid of the good gifts of God, and that's kind of a scary thing to say.
No, I think it's on point though.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
what do you do when you have a good gift? Well, now you're a person with a good
Bushel.
gift, right? And you can't, right, to your point, right? But you actually have to take it up and put it on the table so that it gives light to the house and the world, right? And that's a difficult thing because that's hard. It's pretty easy to hide a light under a bushel, right? I could do it right now, and the lighting in the studio would immediately be very different.
It would be.
But to actually take the gifts that you've been given, have the discernment to order your loves in a correct way that brings that gift into the world and serves the most amount of people. It's difficult. It takes trial and error. You have to be wrong sometimes. You have to be embarrassingly wrong sometimes. And you have to trust God that it comes right in the end. And those are the things that we as human beings struggle the most with. The message that is kind of given to ambitious, productive people, especially in business, from church culture is, that's great, just don't do too much of it, right? As opposed to treating it as a blessing and treating it as a responsibility. But it's a responsibility that it is fulfilling to actually live out.
It does seem strange that be less is often a big part of the answer that's given, especially in like the moderate and left. I mean, in some right circles as well, but just be less of what you want to be.
Yeah.
And it seems dehumanizing is maybe the wrong word.
It's rather unscriptural. We can just go right to
unscriptural.
We just cut right to the heart of the matter at some
absolutely.
level. If you're telling people to fundamentally downplay the gifts that God gave them,
yeah,
right? Whether that's the gift of your identity, which is a gift, right? God gave it to you to do something with. It is a gift. Or whether that's the gift of your ambition or your productivity or even a career, right? Or a vocation for that matter, right? You don't want to downplay those things. Your first posture should not be, how do I make sure I'm not doing too much of this thing that God has given me to grow his kingdom? I think that's generally a rather ridiculous posture to have. Unfortunately, it does pop up a lot. We can talk about other places it pops up if you really want to, but it's unfortunately very prominent in the church.
And I think the framing that's used is idolatry. We don't want to serve X more than God. And I think maybe the first question should be, are we serving God at all?
Yeah.
If our first instinct is to pull back from everything that we want to do.
Yeah, we can dig into the OPC part of this, right? If you talk about the second commandment, right? The violations of the second commandment is giving glory to other things, that which is due to God alone. And it's like, well, that's not everything though, because we have to do lots of things in our life, right? We're supposed to, at some level, humans are supposed to build things. They're generally supposed to have families, supposed to have kids, right? Supposed to fill the earth. And not just with kids, right? They're supposed to fill the earth with industry, with, roads and plumbing and podcast studios, a few
hoorah.
Here and there. This hoorah thing is really, we'll go with that. You have to do things though, right? And simply pursuing things like ambition does not mean you have inherently made an idol out of ambition. Now you can, and there are people who do.
Of course.
But for the love, let's not act like everyone who pursues something that is meaningful to them, or someone who pursues a responsibility that they feel very deeply needs to be brought into the world, is inherently being an idolater. That is the mindset that has held Christianity back in unbelievable ways. Whether that's in masculinity, whether that's in anti-ambition, whether that's in anti-productivity. We can even talk about how it's kind of infected parts of our discourse around technology and culture, this sorts of thing. It's not correct, right? It is you are overreacting to something. You're ascribing idolatry to it when it's not. And the simple answer is, well, just don't make it an idol. You always do have the choice to not make something an idol because it's a sin, and sin is a choice.
Yes.
So where do we go from there? Well, you do healthy things with your masculinity. You do healthy things with your ambition. You work and you do your duty as a worker, as a husband, as a father, if you're a man, right? To the glory of God. And you do those things. And at no point do you necessarily have to make any of those things an idol. Fascinating.
Yeah. It's amazing that it turns out that the things that God gave you, he wants you to do something with, there's like a whole parable of the talents kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think if the first line of the parable of the talent would be, don't be too into money, I feel like that would undercut.
Yeah, well, and that's how it's preached.
Yeah.
Super often. And then if we're going to go down this road, we might as well, right? I'm a Christian who works in business, right? So we can just talk about how this often gets mispreached. It gets preached as, well, don't care too much about money. It's like, well, I don't think that's it, right? The point is about 1, fear, 2, wisdom, 3, correct use of your resources, right? So I think there's a bit, I believe it's in the parable of the talents, where the master says, if you were afraid, you should have given your money to the bankers. What does that say? What certainly does not read as you should not care at all about money. I was watching a lecture series recently, and the speaker made a point about the thing about Marxists who talk about the Bible. The one thing that Marxists who talk about the Bible get right is that they admit that the Bible has things to say about money and business and economics. And non-Marxist Christians often don't do that. They won't let Jesus' words about economics and business in the Bible be about economics and business in the Bible, which is, we got far afield here. But there are real questions in terms of when we're thinking about, is there a masculinity crisis? Is there an ambition crisis? Is there a purpose, meaning crisis? Right? It's like, yes, probably to all those things. But our goal as Christians is to find the right order of things. It's not just to, here are all the things about your life that are potential idols, and the most prudent option is to remove them from your life completely. If you did that, you wouldn't actually do anything, which does not make you do not get good Christian awards for just not doing anything. If anything, it seems to be the opposite.
Exactly. And that's the one that invested, that one had the one talent to invest. He was criticized for actively choosing, because of his view of God, to not use what he had been given. And the others were rewarded because they actively chose to use what they had been given by God, or the master in the parable, who is a representative of God in this case, for something good. And the fear of strong, good gifts, I think, speaks to fears that are more cultural than they are truly biblical. They are more ideological. They are more fears about the vibe of being perceived poorly as a man, or even fear of the self that you won't be able to control. And what you said about the orientation of all of our gifts, what you said about choosing not to make it an idol, I always think of Augustine, and this is kind of like a pet topic of mine on the podcast, thinking about the order of the loves, in which you kind of alluded to earlier.
If kind of figured you're the only person I've ever said, I often think of Augustine.
Yes.
That's not true, actually. I know a lot of people in my personal life who often think about Augustine, so maybe that's my friends.
Rent-free, unfortunately, up here.
Yeah.
But
you think about the Roman Empire too, or is it just Augustine?
Honestly, less so about the Roman Empire than Augustine, probably. But I feel
like back to that.
Since he was in the time space, it kind of counts. But
it really doesn't.
The thing about Augustine is all of these things that he truly, deeply loved, he said he loved them in God, right? And all of these things are good, except when the loves are misordered. It's not that the loves are fundamentally structurally bad, it's that the loves are misordered. So when we talk about masculinity, we talk about these strong loves of certain things. The question is not love less, but love in right order.
Yeah. I was going to say the older I get, I just made a reference about you being super old. But like
I say that a lot too.
That bit where Solomon asked God for wisdom, when I was like 16, I think I kind of got that. Now that I'm 24, oh man. Because what is he asking for there? He's not just asking for like the ability to like make wisecracks and do witty banter, although presumably that came. He was a king, it happens. But what Solomon's praying for there is the thing that I think especially I think every young guy in their 20s realizes they really have a deep need for, which is, how do I discern between difficult things? How do I decide what love of what thing has to rule the day in this situation? How do I make that call? Because when you're 24, you don't know. And when Solomon was becoming king, he didn't know. And that was the prayer, right? The prayer is, let me cut through all the noise. Let me understand the right order to put things in. And that was obviously for his own life. He did that with a variety of success.
There were some misses, yeah.
Yeah, there were some L's taken.
Certainly.
But at the same time, what he's praying for is not only are you trying to rule yourself and order your loves correctly, but you have to do that for the sake of, in Solomon's case, the sake of the kingdom.
Yeah, and that's why he asked for it.
Right.
He didn't ask to be wise because he really wanted to write a book of Proverbs or something like that,
No.
or a book of Ecclesiastes. And I mean, that's an incredible thing to produce. But it
I
was
am a
in
youth,
service
I
of
lack
God's people.
discernment.
Yes.
What now?
Yes.
And that was what he was known for until the L's started being taken.
Exactly.
And that's what made the L's so much worse. Because
he had the talent.
because if you have someone who's known for discernment, if you have a talent, the sins in your life match those talents, right? So I just by virtue of like the industry I work in, I know a lot of very confident people. You know what confident people have deep temptations to do? Lie, manipulate people. Like I think you have to understand, if you have talents in life and you have gifts that God has given you, the worst temptations are the things that co-opt those gifts for disordered ends, right? Because if you're a really confident person, you don't have an overly strong temptation to shyness, chances are. But that doesn't mean that you're not tempted. It just you just have to be aware of that. I think a lot of people who were raised in had really solid educational backgrounds, have a pretty high degree of social charisma, verbal acuity, that sort of thing. We're not prepared for the fact that is going to come with some very specific temptations. It happens, right? And if you're a young man who's pretty confident and you have an interest in being a leader, right, serving in a leadership role, you have to understand there are temptations that will come with that. And that's not a masculinity crisis. That's a crisis of what to do with your masculinity and where to order your love in that situation. Because getting that wrong is, you think about every major scandal involving some guy, it all comes down to disordered love. And almost always it involves a very charismatic, very convicted, very compelling person giving in to some of those temptations that charismatic, confident, compelling people fall into.
And then often taking down the organizations.
And it
that they
destroys
built with those
organizations,
gifts.
it destroys states, it destroys empires.